Right now, we are looking at a 15th century painting that is basically the absolute definition of peace. I mean, you look at it, and it literally lowers your blood pressure.
It really does.
Right.
Yeah.
But the very people who created this beautiful culture were systematically hunted, kidnapped, and, well, erased, really, to build another country's economy. Today, we're bringing the receipts.
Yeah, it's kind of the ultimate historical illusion. We love this grand narrative of human advancement, right? We love standing in museums and admiring these pristine artifacts of progress.
Oh, totally.
But we rarely want to look at the incredibly messy and, often deeply transactional realities of how that progress was actually funded.
Exactly. And so, for this deep dive, we have two sources in front of us that initially, at least, seem like they belong in completely different universes. Our mission today is to figure out how they collide.
And it is quite a collision.
It is.
Yeah.
So for you listening, I want you to picture the first source.
Yeah.
It is this breathtaking image of a traditional scroll painting called Mangyu Doendo, which translates roughly to a painting of a dream. And it really is a dreamscape. You're looking at these towering, misty, almost jagged mountains, cascading waterfalls, and this incredibly delicate grove of peach blossoms tucked right into the valleys.
Yeah, and down the left side, there is this elegant, flowing calligraphy. It feels completely elevated from the dirt and grime of the real world. Pure, untouchable.
Exactly. Untouchable is the perfect word. But then we have our second source. It's this stark, almost brutal historical account, and it's titled A Vanished Dream, Mangyu Doendo, Bring Back Everything You Can Get.
Yeah, quite a tonal shift there.
Right. And this document details the grim, just desperate reality of a Japanese warlord's invasion of Joseon, which is historical Korea.
It's total whiplash. I mean,
Yeah.
you are instantly dragged from an ethereal, floating peach blossom dream right into the mud, the wind, and just the blood of a military encampment.
And that right there is the central mystery we are unpacking today. How does a painting of a peaceful utopia connect to a ruthless tale of war, political survival, and the mass kidnapping of thousands of artisans?
It's a heavy question.
It is. Because for you, the listener, understanding this, it completely changes how you will look at technological leaps in history. So let's jump in. The historical account begins on a day where the wind is absolutely howling through a military camp.
Right.
We meet this Japanese warlord named Shimazu Yoshihiro, and he is sitting quietly in his command tent. Outside this tent, there are 7,000 soldiers preparing to deploy for an invasion.
Which is massive. I mean, the ground would have literally been shaking with the logistics of moving a force that size. You've got armor clanking, horses, shouting. It's the absolute precipice of a massive campaign.
But the accounts of Yoshihiro at that exact moment note something incredibly revealing about his demeanor. He isn't showing the typical bravado of a conquering hero.
Not at all.
He's not sitting there dreaming of destiny or imperial glory. Instead, his face shows this cold calculation and surprisingly just deep anxiety. He is dreading this.
And frankly, he should be. Because he knows he's already fighting from a massive deficit before a single sword is even swung in this new campaign.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me push back on that for a second. If his army is already battered, and the accounts mention he just suffered this humiliating defeat at a place called Ushu, why on earth is his solution to launch a massive foreign invasion?
It seems counterintuitive.
Right. Wouldn't a battered commander want to lay low, rebuild his forces, and just, survive? That seems like a terrible gamble.
Well, in a vacuum, yes, you would absolutely lay low, but you have to look at the political mechanisms of Japan at this specific time. We are in the late 16th century here.
Okay.
Japan had just been forced into unification by a supreme leader, the Kampaku, a man named Toyotomi Hideyoshi. So for decades prior, warlords like Yoshihiro operated almost like independent kings.
Oh, I see.
But suddenly, they are essentially just middle managers in Hideyoshi's massive, ruthless military bureaucracy.
So laying low just wasn't an option.
Exactly. Laying low meant irrelevance, and to a supreme leader like Hideyoshi, an irrelevant, weakened clan is a useless clan, and useless clans get wiped out. Yeah. So Yoshihiro's defeat at Ushu severely damaged his standing with the Kampaku. He is sitting in that tent knowing that this invasion of Joseon isn't some romantic quest to expand an empire.
It's survival.
Right. It is a desperate, calculated maneuver to prove his clan still has value.
It's almost like a failing corporate executive.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
The CEO who just botched a massive product launch The company's stock has completely tanked, and the board of directors is actively sharpening their knives.
Right, they're out for blood.
So to save his own skin, he pitches this wildly aggressive, high-stakes, hostile takeover of a rival company. He doesn't even want to do it. The risk is enormous, but if he doesn't bring back a massive win, he is getting ousted. Or, in Yoshihiro's case, executed.
That's a highly accurate way to frame it. And what's really fascinating, if we connect this to the bigger picture, is how that absolute political desperation strips away all the usual ideological framing we attach to war. When his commanders come to him in the tent, specifically Captain Nakayama, and ask for their operational orders, Yoshihiro doesn't give them some grand speech about honor or a divine mandate. He tells them their goal is simply to survive.
He literally tells Nakayama to fight while reducing sacrifices.
Yeah.
Which sounds incredibly pragmatic until he drops the actual objective of the campaign.
Yes, the real goal.
He tells his commanders that when they arrive in Joseon, the order is, and this is a direct quote, bring back everything you can get.
He really doesn't mince words. Nakayama even clarifies, asking, "You mean spoils of war?" And Yoshihiro confirms it. He states plainly that extracting wealth is the fundamental reason they are crossing the sea.
So essentially, this wasn't just looting for the sake of getting rich. This was a bloody resume
A
builder.
resume builder, exactly.
They were extracting the wealth and the foundation of an entire society to literally buy their way back into political favor at home.
Precisely. The gold, the silver, the books, the raw materials, they were the required capital to prove to the Kampaku that the Shimazu clan was a revenue-generating asset.
Right. But, theoretical plans made in a quiet tent rarely survive contact with the enemy. The reality of trying to bring back everything is where this story turns from a political maneuver into a historical meat grinder. Wait, before we get to the burning villages and the meat grinder, let's ground this for a second. When we say the invasion of Yosan, the Injin and Jongyu Wars, what era are we actually in, and what did this invasion actually look like on the ground?
So we're looking at the years 1592 to 1598. Hideyoshi launches hundreds of thousands of troops across the sea into the Korean peninsula, and it is catastrophic.
Just massive scale.
Huge. Yoshihiro's forces thought they were going to sweep in, take the capital, and extract the resources. Instead, they run into fierce, unyielding resistance.
The accounts mention massive clashes, right?
Yeah.
About the Battle of Jeonju Fortress, but also these endless grinding fights with nameless local militias.
Right. It was not a clean sweep at all.
Not at all. The historical record actually counts down his forces for us. They start with those 7,000 soldiers on that windy day. Then it drops to 6,000. Then 5,000. By the time the war is nearing its end, less than half of Yoshihiro's original army is even left alive.
Which puts Yoshihiro in an impossible position. His primary currency, his military strength, is bleeding out into the soil of a foreign land.
Yeah.
If he returns to Japan with a shattered army and just a handful of silver, his clan is finished.
So his commands become even colder. As his army shrinks, and as they're literally burning down Joseon villages, his response to losing half his men is simply, bring more.
Bring more.
If the cost in blood is higher, the payout has to be exponentially larger to offset the loss on the ledger.
But here is the critical turning point of the entire campaign. Yoshihiro realizes a fundamental economic truth. Gold runs out.
Right.
You can pillage all the physical treasure a city has, but once you spend it back in Japan, you are broke again. To truly secure his clan's future, he needed an industry. He needed a renewable source of immense wealth.
And this is where it gets really interesting and honestly deeply disturbing. His forces stop just looking for chests of treasure. They start targeting a very specific type of loot.
Yes.
They begin capturing, binding, and mass kidnapping potters, artisans.
It is a systemic, targeted extraction of human capital. They aren't just taking the finished, beautiful ceramics. They are taking the people who know how to make them.
But why potters? I mean, I think when we hear the word potters today, we imagine someone at a local craft fair making coffee mugs. Why would a desperate warlord care so much about people making bowls?
Because you have to understand the technology gap of the 16th century. In that era, advanced ceramics wasn't arts and crafts. It was high technology. It was literally the silicon chip of its day.
Oh, wow.
At this time, Japan was primarily producing low-fire earthenware. It's porous, it chicks easily, it's functional but not refined at all.
Yeah.
Joseon, on the other hand, had mastered high-temperature porcelain and advanced stoneware.
What makes that so difficult to achieve? I mean, it's just clay, right? Right.
Oh, it's everything. To make porcelain, you need temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius. You can't just build a campfire for that.
Right, that's incredibly hot.
You need highly specialized, multi-chambered climbing kilns built into the sides of hills to draft the heat perfectly. And you need a deep understanding of material science to find the exact right type of clay, like kaolin, that won't just melt into a puddle at those temperatures. You need to understand the chemical reactions of glazes.
Ah, so you can't just steal a beautiful Joseon teacup and reverse engineer it. Just looking at the cup doesn't tell you how to build the kiln or mix the clay.
Exactly. The knowledge is in the hands and minds of the people. Furthermore, the Japanese elite, the very people Yoshihiro needs to impress to survive, were absolutely obsessed with the tea ceremony.
Okay, making the ceramics highly valuable.
Unbelievably valuable. Masterpiece ceramics were literally worth their weight in gold, or sometimes even traded for whole castles.
So castles for a bowl.
Yeah. So Yoshihiro realizes that the hands of these Joseon potters represent infinite wealth. They represent technology, power, and ultimately the future of his clan.
It's like a struggling modern tech company realizing they shouldn't just steal their rival's new smartphone, because that's just a one-time payout.
Right.
They need to physically kidnap all their rivals' lead engineers, throw them in a van, and force them to build the tech in their own headquarters. They're stealing the brains that build the industry.
And they did it on a massive, massive scale. Tens of thousands of artisans across various disciplines were dragged back to Japan during these wars. It was a calculated cultural theft designed to jumpstart the Japanese economy.
You picture these brilliant artisans bound in restraints, ripped from their homes, watching their villages burn behind them.
It's horrific.
And they're being loaded onto ships to a place they will likely never leave, all so a warlord can cover up his past failures and balance his political checkbook. Which brings us to the aftermath, and how this brutal reality connects back to that beautiful, serene scroll painting we started with.
The aftermath is where the history becomes incredibly haunting, I think. We see Yoshihiro much later. The war is over. He's an old man now. It's late at night, and he is sitting alone.
He's holding a small, delicate, beautiful Joseon ceramic that he brought back from the war. And he's looking at this quiet, perfect piece of art, and he murmurs to himself, and this is from the source, "Wasn't it a dream we came looking for?"
It's a moment of profound, almost crushing self-awareness. He went across the seas seeking a dream of glory, of security, of a revitalized empire. But sitting there in the dark, he realizes the sheer emptiness of his victory.
Yeah.
The accounts note that he recognizes all they actually brought back was death, plunder, and silence.
The cognitive dissonance of that moment is staggering. Imagine holding this breathtaking, fragile piece of beauty in your hands and knowing in your bones that it was paid for in blood, in burning villages, and in kidnapped lives.
Right.
He asks himself if they can really justify all that destruction by simply saying it was to survive. And he can't even answer his own question.
Because there is no justification that washes the blood off the teacup. But the chilling part of this history is that while Yoshihiro might be personally haunted by his memories of the people dragged away, the rest of his society isn't.
No, they're celebrating.
Exactly. They are busy moving on and reaping the benefits of his plunder.
Let's talk about those benefits. What actually happened to those kidnapped engineers, the potters, once they got to Japan?
They were taken to places like the Satsuma domain in the southeast of Kyushu, which is Yoshihiro's territory, and they were immediately put to work.
Right.
They had to scour the Japanese countryside for new deposits of the right clay. They were forced to build those massive climbing kilns, the noburigama, and eventually that advanced Joseon ceramic technology firmly takes root in Japanese soil. It gives birth to the famous Satsuma ware, which becomes a massive, massive economic engine.
And the historical account we have drops what might be the most damning line I've ever read about this era. Describing this massive economic boon built on the backs of stolen lives, it simply says, people called it development.
People called it development. It's an absolute gut punch, because it forces us to look at the grand historical irony of progress. What one society or one generation calls a golden age of art, an economic miracle or development, is so often built entirely on the unseen, unacknowledged tragedy of another.
Yeah.
The people in Satsuma saw beautiful new ceramics and a booming local economy. They did not see the bound hands of the people forced to build the kilns.
Which brings us full circle to the Mangyu down today, the title of our first source, that beautiful scroll painting with the peach blossoms. It translates to a painting of a dream. It depicts a utopia, a peaceful land, basically untouched by the chaos of the world.
But in the fires of the Imjin and Zhong Wars, the reality of that dream was violently interrupted. The society that produced that level of serene beauty was systematically dismantled. The painting almost acts as a ghost now.
It's such a jarring contrast. You have the peaceful landscape in the painting and the destroyed reality of the very people who created it. The historical account concludes that all that was left in the wake of this development was the silence of the surviving and the traces of the vanished.
It really forces us to fundamentally question the provenance of progress. When we look at a sudden flourishing of art in a historical empire or a massive leap in infrastructure, we have to ask, who paid for this?
Right.
Whose mines were extracted? Whose homes were burned to fuel this new kiln? History is rarely a neat upward line of human achievement. It's messy, it's deeply transactional, and it's often unimaginably cruel.
And yet the art itself, the ceramics, the painting, remains objectively beautiful.
Yeah.
You can't deny the beauty of the Mongyu Downadua, but you also cannot ignore the context of the vanished dream it represents.
You have to hold both.
It's a heavy tension to hold. But it's necessary if we want to actually understand the mechanics of the world, rather than just looking at the pretty surface of it.
Because if we only look at the surface, we become complicit in that erasure. We accept the development without ever acknowledging the cost.
And that brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with today. Our historical text ends with an incredibly poetic but devastating line about the silent witnesses to all this history.
Yeah, the closing line.
Thinking about the fleets of ships carrying those kidnapped artisans, the stolen treasures, and the desperate warlords trying to outrun their own political failures, they all crossed that same water. And the text notes, the sea knew everything. It just didn't speak.
The water absorbed all of it. The terror, the greed, the ingenuity, the loss. And it just kept the secret.
So the next time you are standing in a quiet museum, looking at a stunning piece of ancient technology or a beautiful artifact, and you feel that profound sense of peace, I want you to think about that silence. If the oceans that carried those captive artisans or the earth beneath those conquered villages could suddenly speak, what terrifying nightmares would they reveal about the beautiful dreams we were looking at?